When I tell you that I never in this lifetime thought I would witness somebody tell the truth. I'm talking about the absolute truth, y'all. Listen, I'm gonna play this video for y'all. And y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments, baby. He can come to the cookout. I'm about to play it, and y'all let me know what y'all think.
I'm getting notifications on practically every video now saying that they're no longer being pushed in the For You feed. But it doesn't matter, because I can never be stopped. One thing that you have to understand about white people is that most of them have no idea where they came from, and history proves it. White people love to act like they have the strongest connection to history and heritage, yet history suggests they have spent centuries erasing, forgetting, and outright fabricating their own origins. They abandoned their original ethnic identities the moment they assimilated into whiteness. They wiped out their own peasant and working class histories in favor of fake aristocratic lineages. They spent centuries colonizing and erasing other people's cultures, but can't even tell you what their great-grandparents did. They turned their entire heritage into a DNA test and a St. Patrick's Day drinking excuse. Even today, most of them don't actually know where their ancestors were from or what they did. At some point, we have to ask, if white people were truly the keepers of history, why have they spent centuries proving they don't even know their own roots? White people erased their own ethnic identities in favor of whiteness. Irish, Italian, German, Polish, and other European immigrants were once seen as not white in the US. To escape discrimination, they abandoned their languages, names, and traditions to become more American. They replaced actual cultural ties with vague concepts like Western civilization. Today, they mock new immigrants for doing exactly what their ancestors did. Meanwhile, other groups fought to preserve their histories. Black, indigenous, and immigrant communities held on to their traditions despite white hostility. Latino, Asian, and African cultures maintained strong generational ties. Nobody else threw away their own heritage just to fit into a melting pot that only diluted them. White people weren't preserving heritage, they were running from it. White people fabricated their own family histories. They loved to claim noble or royal ancestry, despite the fact that most of their ancestors were peasants. They latched onto coats of arms and last names as signs of lineage, despite the fact that those things were often assigned randomly. They claim deep European heritage, yet don't know anything about the history of those places. They'll say they're 1/16th Cherokee without a shred of proof. Meanwhile, other communities actually maintain lineage. Indigenous cultures have detailed clan systems tracking ancestry for generations. African societies preserved genealogies and oral histories before white colonial disruption. Nobody else makes up their ancestors just to feel special. White people weren't celebrating history, they were rewriting it. White people lost their folk traditions, then complained about losing culture. Medieval and early modern European peasants had distinct cultural traditions, until aristocrats and industrialists destroyed them. Folk traditions, pagan festivals, and local dialects were erased by church and state control. They industrialized their own homelands, erased rural life, then looked down on cultures that preserved old ways. They mock indigenous and African traditions while failing to realize they lost their own centuries ago. Meanwhile, other cultures defended their heritage. African, Asian, and indigenous societies fought to keep traditions alive, despite white colonial rule. Latino, Middle Eastern, and South Asian cultures maintained strong spiritual and communal traditions. Nobody else industrialized their own lands so aggressively that they erased their own culture. White people weren't preserving civilization, they were bulldozing their own past. White people erased their own peasant histories in favor of fake nobility. The majority of Europeans in the 19th century were illiterate peasants, working land that they didn't own. Rather than embracing their real working class roots, they invented fake family ties to aristocracy. They celebrate their European heritage without acknowledging that their ancestors were more likely to be serfs than peasants. They scoff at modern labor struggles despite coming from a history of exploited workers. Meanwhile, other societies acknowledge their real histories. Black and indigenous communities embrace real histories of survival and resilience. Latino and Asian cultures have long traditions of honoring labor and the working class. Nobody else tries to pretend that their great-great-grandfather was a duke when he was probably a struggling farmer. White people weren't preserving heritage. They were upgrading their family history like it was a bad resume. Even today, white people have no real connection to their ancestry. They rely on DNA tests because they don't actually know where they come from. They treat Irish, Scottish, and Viking heritage as cosplay rather than real history. They have no living connection to their motherlands, yet still claim them for identity. They lost their original cultures, but insist they are the standard for civilization. Meanwhile, other groups still hold on to their histories. Diaspora communities maintain cultural ties even generations after migration. Indigenous nations continue to protect and pass down knowledge. Nobody else is out here in their 40s realizing that they might be a little German. White people weren't protecting history. They were losing themselves in it. If white people were truly the leaders of history and civilization, why have they spent centuries proving they have no idea where they even came from? Cope.
All I can say is he woke up and chose violence. And all I can say is let him cook. I appreciate the truth. Let him cook, Shad. Let him cook.